It's the Steam Summer Sale, and you know what that means. It's time for savings. So here are my picks and my recommendations for this Steam Summer Sale 2025. Let's get right on into it, shall we? We're going to kick it off today with a game that is my frontrunner for Game of the Year, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. A beautiful homage to the old school Final Fantasy games. A big explorable world map, absolutely jaw-dropping visuals and music, accompanied by incredible characters, makes for an overall narrative that is absolutely engaging from start to finish with twists and turns, and a beautiful combat system that kept me enthralled with the game from start to finish as well. It's a great blend between actually having mechanics such as real-time dodging and parrying that work seamlessly alongside the turn-based combat system that just gives Clair Obscur Expedition 33 this unique but recognizable charm. If you are a massive fan of those older school Final Fantasy games, you've probably heard of Expedition 33, but I would fully recommend you check it out. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is 10% off for $44.99. Look, Expedition 33 is new, but I will always talk about that game because I absolutely adore it. However, if you're looking for a game on a steeper discount, then allow me to introduce to you Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. You may have heard of its sequel, but while the follow-up game never really grabbed my attention when I started to play it, the original though, well, I think that game is special. It's an open-world, combat and gameplay-driven RPG that oozes that PS2 and PS3 RPG charm. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is a game with jank, but it's like lovable jank, if that makes sense. You'll have abilities that feel wrong to use in the moment, and then when you actually use them, you understand why you spent like borderline 20-30 seconds charging up an ability because you rocket an enemy to the stratosphere. It's a really cool RPG. It's a little bit light on story, but I think it more than makes up for that in the feeling of the adventure and the feeling of the actual gameplay. Mixing and matching your party members, alongside your own abilities for unique compositions that give you fun and interesting ways to interface with enemies and to defeat them. It's just a really solid RPG, and you can easily find yourself, because I did as well, lose many hours into this game. And also, that main menu theme is just beautiful. I love that song so much. If you ever get the urge to lose yourself in a medieval style open world RPG, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, despite its age, still holds up to this day in my opinion. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is 84% off for $4.79. Let's add another medieval-style RPG into the mix, Final Fantasy XVI. One of the most polarizing entries in the series, but in my opinion, is a pretty dang good game in of itself. Now, it's not the best game I've ever played by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, in terms of all of Final Fantasy, 16 arguably has my favorite protagonist with Clive Rossfield, and some of the most hype and epic moments I've ever seen in the medium. The combat is a perfectly solid action RPG. I think it gets a bit repetitive the later in the game you get, and the later power-ups in my opinion are also just kind of boring. But the foundational structure of the combat, if you like real-time combat, if you like games like Devil May Cry, games like Bayonetta, Final Fantasy XVI doesn't play entirely like that, but it's adjacent. Great music, a perfectly solid cast of characters, and a rather engaging story that in my opinion does kind of fizzle out near the end, but overall is still compelling. If you haven't given Final Fantasy XVI a look yet, I would recommend at least playing the demo that's also available on Steam, because I think there are a lot of pros to this game, and while it's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, I think the pros outweigh the cons. This is a good game, and if you've been wanting an excuse to play Final Fantasy XVI, now's as good a time as any. Now, you can get the complete edition with the DLCs. I don't think they're particularly mandatory, they're really light on story, though there's some interesting fights and power-ups you can get within them. Final Fantasy XVI Complete Edition is 35% off for $45.49, or you can just get the base game, which is 35% off for $32.49. Let's move on to our Atlas arc for the video. To represent Persona, I'm going to recommend Persona 4 Golden. The other game's on sale, but I want to particularly highlight Persona 4 Golden, seeing as they just announced the remake Persona 4 Revival. However, Persona 4 Golden itself is a, well, I would say perfectly good RPG, but in my opinion, one of the best games ever made that still holds up to this day. Sure, the graphics look a bit aged, but overall, I think this is probably the most well-rounded of all the Persona games. It has has my favorite cast of characters, some of the best music you'll ever hear in the medium, an incredible story, really fun gameplay, and just oozes that Persona charm of balancing your overworld social activities in that social simulator the game is so well known for, alongside the dungeon-crawling RPG goodness. It has that turn-based combat. The dungeons are a bit of a drag, but the combat makes up for it in my opinion. And weaving and balancing the two halves of this game makes for such an interesting and comprehensive experience. Persona 4 Golden is a game that I always find myself coming back to, and it does such a wonderful job of blending comedy and like summertime jams alongside an emotional, engaging murder mystery that's going on throughout the entire game. If you want to experience Persona 4, you do not have to wait for revival at all. Persona 4 Golden has one of the best overall voice acting performances I've ever seen, and I'm not just talking one character, I'm talking about like the entire cast. The game itself holds up and is incredible. I fully recommend Persona 4 Golden, which is 50% off for $9.99.
It's a story about a world very different from ours.
The fool of a king is dead!
Without an heir to wear the crown, what will become of the royal magic?
Who deserves his crown? A man of proven strength!
Now, while Atlus is known for Persona, their latest RPG, in my opinion, is also one of their best.
Welcome one and all to the inauguration of the tournament for the throne!
If not their best. Metaphor Refantazio is a brilliant masterpiece of a game from start to finish, decoupling itself from the high school aesthetic and setting that Atlus is really known for from a lot of its popular games. Metaphor Refantazio tells you a fantasy story. The king of Uchronia was assassinated, leaving the kingdom in disarray, so an election is to be held to determine the new king. Candidates must go across the kingdom performing various challenges and deeds to prove themselves to the people to earn their favor. However, the man that murdered the king, he's one of the frontrunners. He's also your enemy, and in order to pursue him, you yourself must enter the race and chase the crown. This game is epic. It's awesome. It has incredible characters, beautiful music, and this beautiful painted aesthetic from start to finish, blending the combat from Shin Megami Tensei with the storytelling style and overall gameplay flow of Persona. Metaphor Refantazio is Atlus doing what they always do best, looking at what has come before from them, and asking themselves, how can we do this again but better? That is what Metaphor Refantazio is. In my opinion, it's the blend between the best elements of Shin Megami Tensei, which is more combat-centric, and Persona, blending them together and giving you an awesome fantasy story. It's incredible. And in my opinion, if you like turn-based combat, if you love engaging narratives, you owe it to yourself to not miss out on Metaphor Refantazio. And while a lot of the attention that Atlus manages to acquire is for Persona, and understandably so because those games are awesome, sincerely, do not miss out on Metaphor Refantazio. This game not only lives up to the hype, in my opinion, it exceeds it. There's a rather generous prologue demo also on Steam that gives you access to numerous hours of the actual game. It says prologue, but it's an Atlus game. The prologue goes on for hours and hours, and you'll get a good feel for the overall game. Metaphor Refantazio is 40% off for $41.99. Fantasy lives on. To round out the Atlus arc for this video, we have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Think of it like the Persona 5 Royal for Shin Megami Tensei 5. Alongside the original route the game had when it first shipped on the Nintendo Switch, Vengeance gives you a whole other route. If you like the combat style from Metaphor Refantazio, Shin Megami Tensei is known for that combat system, the press-turn system. I love it. It's super fun and addicting. And if you have found yourself falling out of love with something, say, like Pokemon, but you still like that overall catch the monster and then use them in combat, Shin Megami Tensei is very much in that style. And it does a really dang good job of it, in my opinion. The game can be known for how brutally hard it can be, or you can just overlevel it. And while I wouldn't say Shin Megami Tensei 5, and just Shin Megami Tensei overall, from my experience, isn't as story-focused or forward as, say, Persona and Metaphor Refantazio, it's not as if the story told here is slacking. It's engaging by itself, and the main and demons, the monsters you fight and catch in the game, have interesting and varied personalities in a world that is post-apocalyptic in setting, but beautiful in presentation. This game just oozes rule of cool in so many different ways, and is so fun. And if you're too concerned about the game being overly difficult, there are various modes you can toggle. So you can just easily go to an easier mode, or even just download safety difficulty, which is free by the way. It's a really, really, really solid and enjoyable monster collectathon that puts more focus and attention in terms of the combat and your overall character progression than say trying to tell a story to the same degree as say Metaphor, Refantazio, or Persona, but it doesn't make it any lesser. It just shifts the priority. And if that is something that sounds more engaging to you, you will probably love Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Because while it absolutely did frustrate me from time to time, I always found myself coming back to the game. And I'm still going to come back to the game because I've only beaten the original route. I still need to do the new route, Vengeance. And I hear that's even better than the route that I've done. There is a demo for this game, by the way, if that is your cup of tea, but Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance is 50% off for $29.99. Or you can get the Digital Deluxe Edition for 50% off for $34.99. Ori. What can I even say about these gems? They're some of my favorite platformers out there. They're Metroidvania, where you'll get this big, two-dimensional, open world, and throughout the course of each of the games, you'll acquire new power-ups that allow you to interface with various portions of that world in different ways, granting you access to places you couldn't get to before, or allowing you to interact with things you couldn't interact with before. These are some of the most beautiful games I've ever had the pleasure of playing, with incredible soundtracks, and shockingly engrossing stories. I found myself, personally speaking, losing myself into the colors and the joy of this world. If you enjoy games like Metroid or even stuff like Hollow Knight, those kinds of games, and you enjoy 2D platformers, do yourself a favor. Do not miss out on Ori. For lack of a better word, honestly, these games are magical. I'm not even that big in terms of this genre of game, but I found myself just always with a smile on my face when I was playing these games. They're both fun in terms of the gameplay loop, but mesmerizing when it comes to the overall presentation of the story and the visuals and the setting. Ori the Collection, which contains Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition and Ori and the Will of the Wisps, the sequel, is 72% off for $12.49. Or you could just get Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition for 80% off for $3.99, or Ori and the Will of the Wisps, 67% off for $9.89. But if you're in the mood for just platforming, Crash Bandicoot, N-Sane Trilogy, the original 3 Crash Bandicoot games with beautiful graphics that are as frustrating as ever. They hold up insanely well, and if you're a big fan of Wumpa Fruit and Bandicoots overall, Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy is a really good steal right now, especially if you love platformers and you haven't managed to play this game yet, or if you just want a good excuse to play it again. These are some of the better platformers out there, and I think that goes to show just why Crash Bandicoot has always been a gaming character that just finds itself coming back time and time again. Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy is 90% off for $3.99. Look, Halo may have been absent from the Xbox Game Showcase. However, Halo the Master Chief Collection is not going anywhere, and if you want to relive some of the best moments in gaming history, some of the best stories ever told, some of the best characters ever seen, and some of the best gameplay this industry has ever seen, Halo the Master Chief Collection is right there. All these campaigns hold up. They are so dang good, and you also get Halo 4. And Halo the Master Chief Collection doesn't include Halo 5, which honestly should probably be seen as a benefit. Halo is the series that put Xbox on the map all those years ago. It is one of the OGs. Heck, it is the OG of the 2000s FPS. These games are incredible and they hold up to this day, and I find myself coming back to Halo time and time and time again, because whereas modern Halo drops the ball all too frequently, these gems withstand the test of time. They're fun, replayable, enjoyable, with great gunplay, great level design, incredible music, wonderful voice acting and characters, beautiful writing, and great replayability because the gameplay itself is just so fun. You find yourself wanting to play it again and again. And then the games give you all these difficulty modifiers with the skulls so you can play it the way you really want to. And if you want that ball-busting challenge, that is available to you. And if you want something absolutely wacky, like when you headshot a grunt they just start to spray confetti, you can do that as well. Halo is legendary, and that's not just a joke about the difficulty mode, for a reason. It's one of my favorite IP in all of gaming, and one that I hope is able to be brought back by Halo Studios with actually good releases, unlike what we have seen recently with Halo. But if you want to know what Halo looks and feels like when it's firing on all cylinders, Halo the Master Chief Collection is 75% off for $9.99. I will always talk about the good graces of Nier Automata and Nier Replicant. These are two of my favorite games ever made. Nier Automata is my favorite game ever made. Both have these post-apocalyptic settings, but they utilize those areas and that overall idea in drastically different ways that, while these games are technically connected, you can play each of them by themselves and fully enjoy them from start to finish. The combat systems tend to be rather quick, where you have this little companion. In Nier Automata, it's the mechanical pod, and in Nier Replicant, you have Grimoire Vice, a book that shoots out magical energy, or the pod just, well, bullets and lasers and holograms, oh my. They give you a whole host of different powers you can have, like dropping giant hammers on enemies or laser beams, paired alongside just slicing and dicing with your melee weapons. The combat in these games is super fun and enjoyable, with memorable boss fights, some of the best soundtracks this medium has ever seen. Like, legitimately, these songs are incredible, and they will stay with you for years and years and years to come. I still listen to these soundtracks. But in my opinion, what makes Nier stand out so much, both Replicant but especially Automata, is the way they're able to blend storytelling with gameplay, and give you interesting gameplay sections that move the plot along, or tell the story themselves. These games are incredible, they're wacky, they take risks, and they largely pay off. They're also beautiful to look at. These are games, especially Automata, that understands what it means to be a video game and utilizes all of those components in ways you wouldn't expect it to further and tell a story. And that story is compelling, it's enthralling, it's engaging, and it's one that I always find myself coming back to enjoy again, or just to re-experience. While a lot of people paint these games out as depression simulator, yeah, they can feel like that. But when these games want you to feel hyped, or they want you to feel excited and happy, few do it as well as Nier. Some of the best characters ever made, some of the best designs ever, incredible gameplay, beautiful stories, music, visuals, it's just thumbs up in every department. Nier Automata Game of the Yorha Edition is 60% off for $15.99, whereas Nier Replicant version, bear with me, 0.1.2247448713, I told you these games were wacky, is 60% off for $23.99. Speaking of fast-paced hack and slashes, let's go back to one of Platinum Games' best games they ever made, Bayonetta. While Bayonetta 2 and 3 are locked to Nintendo, Bayonetta 1 isn't. And Bayonetta 1? Well, that's a gem of a game now, isn't it? An interesting story with good comedy, it's fast-paced, interesting and fun characters, and it's just wild and wacky, sometimes for the sake of being wild and wacky. Just with ideas from top to bottom that make you sit back in your chair and go, dude, what were they doing when they came up with some of these ideas? But it works! It works with the charm of Bayonetta, and it works so well. If you like that fast-paced, just hack-and-slash combat that Platinum Games is known for, Bayonetta is one of their best versions of that. Bayonetta is 70% off for $5.99. Horror is an interesting genre because those are games that I tend to prefer watching instead of playing. However, I can admit when a game looks really dang good, and with Little Nightmares 3 on the horizon, if you want to prepare for that game and you want to go back to play one of the original Little Nightmares games, well, one isn't on discount unless you buy the bundle, but Little Nightmares 2 is. The overall concept for Little Nightmares 2, and Little Nightmares overall as a series, is that you play as this little guy, but you're in a world that is much bigger and larger than you. And the way this game handles perspective, lighting, and imagery overall, to craft its world and to further its scares, it's really unique in this. And I think that goes to show why these games are so popular and so well known even if you don't play these kinds of games. Little Nightmares 2 is 90% off for $2.99, but if you want the Little Nightmares 1 and 2 bundle that has a bunch of the DLC, that is 53% off for $29.93. Titanfall 2 is one of those games that I'll always talk about because it's a game that is so high quality that it's an absolute travesty we never got a proper follow-up to it. I only play the single player when it comes to Titanfall 2, but I think it's one of the better FPS single player campaigns that is out there. It has two distinct gameplay styles. You either play as the pilot, which is more traditional FPS, with a lot of heavy movement and interesting tech that you can make use of during the campaign, like wall running, diving, and all that good stuff. That gives you a good sense of speed. The weapons feel fun and interesting to use, and they feel meaty when you get some of these kills in. And then on top of that, you have the actual Titans, the giant robots themselves, that operate on a class system. And each type of Titan that you acquire over the course of the campaign has its own specialties. Some may shoot missiles, other Titans work with flamethrowers and flame grenades and all that. There's a lot of variety when it comes to the Titans, and you can swap between them to utilize whatever you find enjoyable when you acquire it. The game is beautiful, it's super fun to navigate around the world, and the story that happens, the story overall itself is like solidly okay. It's nothing to write home about. What is so memorable and beloved about Titanfall 2 is just that good old tropey story of the man with the machine. Good old robot humor where he doesn't understand human emotion, but over the course of the game, you can see him develop a heart. It tugs at the heartstrings, it's fun, it's emotional, it's just fun. And like honestly, sometimes just being fun is more than enough. Titanfall 2 Ultimate Edition is 85% off for $4.49. Let's wrap it up with a game that I absolutely adore, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I love the Final Fantasy VII Remake games, and I think there's a lot of conversation that surrounds these games that can misdirect people from what they actually are. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is one of the most feature-dense games I've ever played. There's so much in this game. The remake games tell essentially a new story for Final Fantasy VII. They largely follow the same plot beats as the original, but it's a new story overall, with new bits, more characterization. Look, admittedly, some parts that are better than others, but I think most of the time the additions to the game are enjoyable and add to the world and or the characters. And I think the combat system that was introduced with Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it was refined and honed in Rebirth, it's super fun and interesting. And the way they're able to blend that ATB system that Final Fantasy VII was known for back in the day with real-time combat, it's a great blend between what Square Enix has been trying to do with the series, which is introduced real-time combat to a series that was known for its turn-based combat. But in Rebirth, in a lot of ways, you get the best of both worlds. The combat is super fun and interesting and compelling, you want to get better at it, and the game gives you so many ways to just create builds and styles all of your own. If you want to focus in on parrying or dodging, you can do that. Item use, you can do that. Synergy attacks, you can do that. The game has a lot going for it, and I think Final Fantasy VII Remake, but also especially Rebirth, what it excels at is not only giving you really fun gameplay. In Rebirth, they give you an absolutely gorgeous world to explore, and so many minigames. This was one of the things Final Fantasy VII was known so much for back in the day. All the different things it allowed you to do, all the different minigames, Rebirth leans into that. Some of them are mandatory, but generally speaking, for overall main story progression, they don't require you to interface with them all that much. And if you really want to get into the weeds of them, that's generally side content you can choose to do or not do. And sometimes they might give you additional story or just additional context. If you go down that road, there is a lot to do in these games, and generally speaking, I think if you don't like a particular element in the game, you can kind of ignore it, so long as it's side content. A lot of people make things out to be that if the thing is in the game, you have to do it, and it's just not the case. And look, even I suffered from that mindset a little bit when I first played this game, but when it all starts to click, I think it really clicks well. The characters are incredible, the voice acting is top tier, the writing is brilliant. The music, just my god, dude. We get some bangers nowadays when it comes to soundtracks, don't we? And if it's one thing Square Enix will never miss, will never take an L on, it's the music. I think Rebirth is one of the best games Square Enix has put out in years and years. It is incredible. And it's also a game that rewards you and borderline asks you to really pay attention to it. There's a lot going on, and that can be confusing for quite a few people. I understand that. The style of story will simply not be for everyone. But I am not of the opinion that it's overly confusing. There are mysteries, but it's part 2 in a trilogy. We're not supposed to have all the answers yet. I think overall, general sentiment in regards to Rebirth and Remake overall will largely be painted on the quality of the third game and what that game turns out to be. But as of right now, with the package that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is presently, I think it's one of the most solid, well-rounded, and enjoyable experiences Square Enix has put out. I fully recommend it, and if you want to play it, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is 40% off for $41.99. And that's going to do it for this year's Steam Summer Sale for 2025. There's so many good games out there. These are just some of my personal favorites, and some of the games that I recommend that you keep an eye out for. Here's where you come in though. Leave a comment down below with your own recommendations for games that you recommend people keep an eye out for during this Steam Summer Sale. And also let me know what you picked up. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!